Hello, everybody. I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Sponge in a video. Back in the 1990s, I created this website called Sponge. Now, it's not easy to describe, but in this video, I'm going to give it my best shot. The site was preceded by a short film that I made in the mid-90s, my first film. It's called Speaking of the Unspeakable, and it was a parody of H.P. Lovecraft. The film featured my friends Brian Howard and Tim Mullen, who are both professional performers for many years. The premise of the film is that Brian portrays Dr. Bernard Bustafson. That's not him there. That's one of the bad guys. We're going to cut here to Sponge headquarters. And that's Dr. Bernard Bustafson, or Barney, and this is Tim Mullen, who plays Kilroy McDooley. Now, Dr. Bustafson is a professor of occult lore at Miskatonic University, modern-day Arkham, Massachusetts, and these are all constructs of Lovecraft. And Tim portrays his sidekick, Kilroy McDooley, a sort of Irish anarchist who has experience battling the forces of evil. And their organization, Sponge, which is an acronym that is, it's never out loud explained what it means, but it stands for Stopping Powerful Organisms from Engulfing Everything. They investigate occult occurrences in and around Arkham, assisted by a cast of other characters, including a rotating historian, usually a grad student at Miskatonic, and the historian acts as a sort of red shirt character who frequently suffers from all manner of mishaps. And in this scene, this is their current historian, who, as you can see, is not quite right in the head. And this is sort of the before the opening credits segment, where the creature that has possessed the historian makes its presence known and starts to burst out of the historian. And as you can see, he's undergoing the change, and he gets blown away by Dr. Bustafson. And those are the opening credits about to happen. And there's a funny sound here, and then they go, whoa, and it goes into the what were the opening credits. Speaking of the unspeakable, so this screened partially anyway at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival that year, and it was certainly a very amateurish production. It was the first thing that I ever did, and it was a lot of fun to make, and it still has a certain goofy charm, particularly for fans of Lovecraftian horror, which I am, and it was conceived as being an episodic concept, so there would be multiple episodes, like a series. That was my hope, was that we would do a lot of these. We only ever did one, but I did write scripts for several of them. And I created the Sponge website as a way to promote the idea. So I wanted there to be folk or lore for that centered around it, and if somebody was a fan of the concept, maybe we could have a conversation and make more episodes or redo it with an actual budget. So that was the idea with the film, and then the site grew up around it. Now, with the help of my friend Marcus, who also did the Warp, the Cosmic Encounter site, Marcus was teaching himself a lot of internet wizardry, and so he said, look, anything you can think of, let me know, and I'll see if I can make it happen as a way to learn how to do stuff and just get better at that sort of thing. So the idea here is that the Sponge website is that Sponge is a real organization. We treat it like it's a real thing. The characters are real people, and the site chronicles the investigations and the adventures of Barney and Kilroy and the others. And it was a tool for historians and other seekers of truth. It established a historian network, and Anybody could join, register to become an historian of Sponge, participating in the investigations and contributing content. So the site itself had a public-facing level of content that anyone could peruse, and it's quite extensive. And that's mostly what I'm going to be able to show in this video, because what we're doing is we're looking at this from the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, because the site itself has been defunct for about 20 years now. All of the data was lost in a terrible internet disaster. And while I could certainly grab all of the public-facing stuff, and I still have that, there's a lot of other stuff that really is what made the site shine, and that data is just lost. There's no way to get it. You have to be able to log into the Historian Network to be able to access it, which I can't really do. So we're stuck with this, but I did want to kind of describe some of that on there. So maybe it was an internet mishap. Maybe it was the Agents of Cthulhu or some other dark entity. Who can say? But for those who were members of Sponge as registered historians, there was an extensive undersite, easily 5 times as large as what the general public could see. So we've got here a few things. You'll notice that there will be banner ads. All of the banner ads were fake, but they're all for businesses in Arkham and whatnot, as well as other things, which I'm going to get into and I'll explain. But on the front page, there was a dynamic site, so there was always going to be a quote from some senior member of the Sponge organization. There would be pictures showing from case files. There was always a weekly poll. There was a threat level thing that you could track to see what the threat was in Arkham, in the United States, and in the world. There was always a current historian. And there were links to, we had merchandise back then. There was an application to join Sponge. There was the bestiary, which it's all the monsters, information about it, but you couldn't access it. So this is one of the things that, it says you can see registered historians only. And there was a very extensive breakdown of all of the different Lovecraftian monsters in the Sponge universe, many of which were drawn from Lovecraftian lore, and just as many were made up for Speaking the Unspeakable and for Sponge in general. And it had a breakdown of there were categories of things like incorporeal and astral, and they had little tags so that you could track those. We do have there's this bar here on the front page is for a lot of stuff that you can access. So the Carp was Kilroy's Arkham resident profiles. So these are prominent characters in Arkham and in the Sponge universe. Some of them show up in case files. Marcus, this is Marcus, who did the server magic. So he was Gus Farkas, who works at the Planar Bowlers. It's a bowling alley. And other people. And all these are people that I knew, that I had sort of subverted and roped into being characters. That's me. I played Matron Taylor, who is married to Uda. That's my actual wife. And we're both in the movie playing these characters. And Matron is like the historians. There was always an historian, as I mentioned. It was like a red shirt. Something horrible would happen to the historian. Horrible things would happen to Matron, but he would survive. And so in the movie, he loses an arm, and you can see by the end of the movie that he's lost the other arm as well. Horrible things happen to him, but he just keeps on going. And so that gives people some context for things in the journals and things in the case files. Tim Mullen wrote a monthly newsletter called Kilroy's Corner, which was always very funny. And a lot of these actually showed up in his Lost Journals, which is a series of books that he's published. The Rogues Gallery is the bad guys in the Sponge universe. So Brian does a live show as a character called Brune. And so we played into that, as the Brune was not really Brian or Dr. Bostofsson. It was this evil creature. Barney's sister, Bedelia Bostofsson, is evil. Other characters that showed up in case files or in the legends of the Sponge activities and adventures, and so it was a great way to catalog everything that was in there. So let me talk a little bit about the application. If you wanted to join Sponge, you had to fill out an application, which was online. So you put in your name and your email. There was a little "How did you hear about Sponge?" and some of these are kind of funny. A subliminal messages from Blockbuster Rentals, strange flashing lights. The word Sponge appeared in my alphabet. So, and some people would be like, "Yeah, I heard about it here at the festival," or the Creamery was our online server for playing Counter-Strike, which had banner ads for Sponge on it. And Sponge was my handle back in the day when I played Counter-Strike online. And then, the Shoggoth.net is a real thing, and the Yog-Sothoth website is not necessarily real, was saved by Sponge. This one showed up a lot. I don't know what people were thinking, because we weren't actually saving people. In the event of my demise, I want to be left where I was found. I have seen the Pumpkinhead, the piano, or both. This was actually a sort of an inside joke. I was seeing a movie with my friend Amy, and we were debating about how many people were more likely to have seen Pumpkinhead or piano. And I actually stood up in the theater before the movie started, and I took a poll. And so I just decided to incorporate this in. It was fairly stupid. If there was a referring email, we liked to track that information. There was some stuff, virgin, yes, no, handedness, ambidextrous. This is stuff that probably was not great to a mother's maiden name. But we weren't actually doing anything with this data. We just wanted it to look. And then we had people rate their characteristics, their open-mindedness, their stamina, their chutzpah, marksmanship. And there were essay questions, and it was all fairly silly. So what happened was you would fill this out and you'd hit send, and it would automatically generate an email. And you would get the email. First, you'd get an email saying, "We've received your application." And it would give you a temporary login information. And so it would be your email address, and it would generate a password from a list of 2 different words put together, and they were all Lovecraftian words like goo and splatter and tentacle and stuff like that. And so your password would be like tentacle-goo. And that would let you log in. So at that point, you could log in, and you were basically in the Historian Network. But you got this email saying we're reviewing your application, and then you would get sent a link to an aptitude test. So, and it would say you have to score appropriately high on the aptitude test to be fully into the Historian Network. So if you clicked on that link, it would take you to a test, which I can't bring up because I can't generate this email, and I have no idea what the URL is now. But the aptitude test had all these just really bizarre questions, and it was all parody of Lovecraft and just some silly nonsense. Then you would get, and that would automatically generate, once you submitted that would automatically generate an email that you would get in about an hour, and it would give you a randomly determined score that was never going to be higher than 35%. So you scored 24% on the aptitude test. And then it would say, "Congratulations, you've been accepted into Sponge." So with the joke being, it doesn't matter how low you score, you were going to get in. And so then you would be able to, of course, you have been able to log in anyway, because you had to actually log in to take the test. That was the other thing, is that in order to take the test, you had to log in. And because we needed to be able to track that data with your login information. And so we, once you got in, the whole website was different, and in a lot of different ways. And so I want to show you a couple of things. So we have like the armory, which it contains, the popular or infamous weapons in the Sponge arsenal. And so those are in 3 categories: projectile, non-projectile, unconventional. So in the projectile weapons, it's all of the guns that Sponge has. So this is in the movie. This is the gun that Dr. Bostofsson has. All the rest of them are the guns that Kilroy has. That's his thing. He's the hatchet man. He's the guy who shoots first, shoots second, asks questions much later. And we had the non-projectile weapons, and it's just an assortment of things with funny little tidbits about them. So like the tomahawk was from, this is Tom Red Leather is a character in the Carp, and two different chainsaws and this heart dagger. Barney keeps the dagger he finds after finding it carelessly tossed aside. And then, of course, you had unconventional weapons, which were a little bit silly. So hot pepper sauce, Glade, a kazoo. But these icons here correspond to the bestiary with the different types. So this is incorporeal, if I remember correctly. This is interdimensional. I have no idea what that is, but yeah, it's just like, the first Bank of Arkham credit card. He's killed an astral lamprey and a hound of Tindalos. Bubble wrap, although not deadly, this handy packing material wreaks havoc on the digestive system of extra-dimensional entities. And yeah, this is more useless than bubble wrap when thrown. And yarn, a dangerous weapon for any occasion. No one likes the taste of yarn. So you're starting to get a sense of what the Sponge website is like. It's tongue-in-cheek for sure. But if you were logged in and you went to this page, there would be more information on here. And the entire site was also annotated. So if we look at these characters, the founders and officers of Sponge, where we've got Barney's bio, Dr. Bostofson. And so that's a picture of Brian with his actual dad, but that's the Arkham Gazette or whatever, which his dad worked at until he mysteriously disappeared. And, you've got some stats on Barney, but there would be sections of the website where Barney gives you special insight. So, yeah, if we go to the library, these are the books that are in the Sponge Library. They have Vermis Mysterious and the Second Cryptical Book of Hassan and the Necronomicon, and they've got a little danger meter. But this would be annotated as well, and it would have extra information that was important to the historians because they were shadows over Innsmouth. That's just all of the things. Marsh's body cream, guaranteed results. Side effects: hair loss, skin flakes, buggy eyes. Lose 30 pounds in 30 days. I digress. So yeah, you'd have all this other stuff that was on the site. You'd be able to go to the bestiary, and you would be able to, if we go to the historian, so let's see if we go to the network here. If no, that's not allowed. There is a page. Well, let's see. The dangers of Sponge. Let's see. Yeah, the historian network. There is a way to look at. It's not the news archives. I'm going to talk about some of these other things because there's some just absurd things that we did on the site. We did have a download section that had it did have Speaking of the Unspeakable, which people could watch. So the online series. We had a radio. We had Miskatonic University Radio. This was an actual internet radio station. It was 24 hours a day of programming. It had ads that we'd made up. It was music that was curated by myself and other people who were directly involved in the website, many of whom started off as historians. They were just registered, and they became very enthusiastic fans because this became a very interactive website, and a lot of that had to do with when we established the forums. So we established these forums, and there was a section for just Sponge directly related stuff, some announcements and public things, and then affiliations. People were starting to create their own little Sponge clubs, and they all had the Bruin Observation Team. These were all fans of Brian's Bruin show, of which there were, a handful of people. Which was the bot? I mean, they had 68 posts, topics, 68 topics with a lot of posts. And then these are other, a California group. Sasemoth was in the Appalachian. These were just fans of the site, fans of the movie. But at one point, there were 300, close to 300. There were more than that at the height of Sponge. But yeah, a lot of messages. Occasionally there was trolling and there was arguing, but we stayed on top of it. But some of the very enthusiastic people on Sponge became more direct content creators. Some people created their own banner ads, contrapuntal and Zan techniques. So this is all Lovecraftian humor. But yeah, I wonder if I can log into the network on this one, because I'm in a couple of different. Nope. I know I was exploring earlier, and I found a way to bring up the number of registered historians. Oh, maybe it's here. Yeah. Nope. I don't even remember what Panic does. I think it just brings up, it brings up an elder sign, one that you can print out. Of course, this link is dead. This is the bookstore from the movie, Right Angles Nightclub. I'm kind of annoyed. What is Sponge? Maybe it's one of these. There was a link to the, what is it? Founders, officers, application. More about Sponge. Well, I'll now enter Sponge. Barney chasing a star vampire. These are all real people that were in the Historian Network. Maybe it's under Y register. I apologize for, just going to take me to the application. And there was no, I really thought it was to the network, but tried logging in and just was having no love there. But one of the other things that I'd set up were these webcams. So the idea was that you could go and at any time of day, you could click on something and you'd be like, oh, there's a webcam pointing in Barney's bedroom. At this day, this is the image that you would see. And what I had done was I had just taken pictures of our bed. But at certain times, like you would see Brian Howard asleep, and he would, if it would, at 1 a.m. he'd be in one position, and then at 2, if you checked it at 2:15, he'd probably be in a different position. And that would be at any time. But then if you checked it at like midnight, and maybe not every day, because I put a lot of effort into the this was rewarding. Just people who had really nothing but time on their hands. But if they looked at it on certain days, certain times, there would be a little story unfold. There would be, Barney wrestling with a giant tentacle, and deep ones chasing him around, and you would catch flashes of it because it's a webcam that's just giving you a single image, so it's not a live cam. This was the best that the technology could offer back in the 90s. We didn't have a live camera, but there was one for Seminary Hill. There was the Arkham Town Hall, the front door. These are just other cameras that were around, and then Western Survivalist was a spin-off organization that this camera didn't maybe it's still loading, but anyway, all sorts of stuff we had on the site. There was a choose your own adventure thing that you could do, and if you were a historian, you could try to get a golden elder sign badge. So if on the Historian Network page, the one that I can't seem to bring up, had a list of all of the historians. And it just really bugs me that that's not going to bring up anything. So that's a way back no go. It would have a list of it, and so when I was looking at this earlier and somehow managed to get to it, I had there were 770 of them, and some of them had a golden elder sign symbol. So this one right here, but gold, and there was a knowledge test that you could take, and we were quizzed about content on the Sponge website, and it was a timed test, so you only had 2 minutes to take this whole test, and then if you scored a certain level, you'd get a golden badge, which would last for 6 months, and in the last month, it would be faded out to let you know you're going to need to take that knowledge test again, and it was always a random assortment of questions, so you never were going to get the same list of questions, and it got updated as the site got updated, so you would be tested on that. There was also a personality test. So these are the journals, different characters, and again, this is annotated if you're logged in, and you can see there's different fonts for the different characters. I received a call from my friend Elias in London. They returned from a dig with some curious artifacts and asked that I come out and have a look. He wouldn't give me any details at all. This was a story that would unfold as well. These little journal entries. So if you check these every once in a while, so you can see how many there are, last 60 days, or journals by character. So this was a whole thing as well. And then there were the cases, and some of these cases were adventures that we did with the historians. And we would, and this is local, in around Arkham. It's cases in, let's see if there's a good one in here to look at. So it was a summary of the adventure, usually with an image. That one's not loading. There was one I looked at earlier. It was around the U.S. We hate the Brune guy. I don't know if that one will show up. The Shoggoth Master was there you can see Brune is attacking. Here you can see we've got doppelgangers. So this is Dr. Frank West, who is played by Spencer Hum, fighting against a Matron Taylor doppelganger, and that's me as Matron Taylor being attacked by, and I only have the one arm, attacked by the Frank West doppelganger. Seismoth, this was one of our spin-off. This was one of our fan groups, and they had their own website too with their own adventures. It was absurd. But we would plan some of these with some of our friends. Let me see if I can find the one. There was one where we went to like Easter Island or the Galapagos or something like that. Let's see, the Nazca expedition. I don't remember. But then we'd work those out with the historians. So, and they would send us pictures that we would Photoshop and add to the fun of what was going on. And then we would have live events as well. And so we were using I had worked at AOL, and we were using like an AOL chat room to do these live events where you could talk, and Brian Howard would be there as well. And so we would do this live chat, it was all text based, this live chat with the historians, and we would have sometimes 15, 20 people show up, and then something would happen. Something would happen during the chat, and it would become its own little adventure that they would participate in. And we had like all kinds of crazy things happen at these, and we did those a number of times. Let's look at the locales. These are all places. So you have Arkham Asylum and the Arkham House of Steaks and Donuts, Arkham Lanes, or the Plainer Bowlers, Bryce Pasture, Bustafson's house, City of the Old Ones, Christchurch Cemetery, the Phrenology Hut, that's where one of the characters works. Hill House is a funny little reference. Immortal Goat Society was a meddlesome local trouble that always was coming up. Sponge sponsored 2 miles of Route 128. This was one of our photos from Seminary Hill. So all kinds of goofy stuff. But this website, it was just massive. It was really, I wish that I could show you everything in the undersite that was in there, because it was just, it was absurdly large. So many aspects of the website. We had games that you could play, and we had other tests. I was telling you about the personality one. So it was very much like a Myers-Briggs thing that you would answer these questions, and it would give you an actual personality breakdown. So these are all different newspapers and articles involving Sponge. Most of them are from the 2 Arkham papers, and some of these are articles that were in the movie. As you may have noticed in the credits, there are clippings from Sponge Adventures. So this is one of them. Chanting, still unexplained. But yeah, you would get these personalities, and that would show up in your historian network what your personality type was. And there was one personality type that was very, basically dedicated to evil. And if you got that, you were locked out of the historian network, and you couldn't access anything except the personality test, which you could retake. And if you got a different score, it would let you back in. And so I don't know how many people that that happened to or who knew about that, but that was the sort of thing that Sponge would do. It had there was like another game, I can't remember the term for it, but it was like one of those old text adventures where you could move around Arkham and you could go on little adventures, and you would type in, I'm going east, going west. And there were other things like that you could do. So you could waste an entire day on the Sponge website, and you could come back the next day, and there would be stuff that you didn't see before or wasn't there before, because not everything loaded up the same way every time you went to it. And so that was what I would dream up, some kind of crazy thing, and say, Marcus, is it possible to do this? And he would say, yeah, let me see what I can do. And it would, and he would do it. He would somehow make that wizardry happen. And some of these are some of the early activities. The interactive adventure. Yeah, here's the knowledge test. I don't know if it'll show up, because you probably have to be logged in to get it. Maybe not. Yeah. Oh no, take the test. So, you had to be logged in. That's what I thought. And yeah, it's still not really letting me see. I don't know how I was able to see that before. But it was a whole list. And of course, you could click on somebody and you could see their stats, not their mother's maiden name or anything like that, but they had, you had like a little profile of things that you could fill out as well. I worked at Creative Lab for a lot of this, and so this is me endorsing the No Man Jukebox, which was our big MP3 player at the time. There's just a lot of stuff, like the correspondence too. We had letters to and from, and so this fed into the lore. You could go and read through all of these things from the Servants of Goo, and so this is. You may have disturbed our festival, but rest assured, you've not heard the last of us, our great masters. So this is just there were mysteries and things that you could solve and discover and post about in the forums. So there were mysteries that the Historian Network found on the site, and they would explore and they'd figure out. And so it was a whole thing. I'm not aware of any other site that quite does or has ever really done this, especially for something that was almost nothing. It was just that one little episode of the thing that we made that a lot of the Historian Network probably never even saw. But we did some radio shows as well. I made a Fight the Evil card game, which is on Board Game Geek. Historian Video Archives. We filmed a whole bunch of these little short videos whenever me and Brian and Spencer or somebody else would get together. And I'm sure that these don't work on the Wayback. Yeah, this is well, maybe. I don't know. I'll let you discover that, because you can it was S-P-O spelling out sponge, and that was what was on the site. So it was a remarkable thing for its time. If you were familiar with the Sponge website back in its heyday, let me know in the comments. I'd love to touch base with people, and perhaps they remember some things that I have forgotten. I'd love to talk about it more and learn more about those people's experiences. I never really interacted with with very many of the people in kind of an offline way. I mean, I actually did meet a lot of these historians, and by a lot I mean like 10 or 12. But I know that Sponge was responsible for several relationships and even some marriages, including Gus Farkas here, who met his current wife through Sponge, and so yeah, it was a very rabid community, small but very dedicated fan base. So yeah, I loved working on Sponge, and I put a lot of work into it in order to create the illusion of it daily being updated, so that yes, you could go to the site day after day after day, even sometimes several times a day, and find stuff that wasn't there the last time you loaded it. And I don't know how many people realize that if you just refreshed it, there was a chance that you would see new information. If by going to just about any page, there would be stuff that Marcus somehow managed to create a way that I could pre-load all kinds of information, all of the daily images, the threat level. I had tracked the threat level, so it wasn't just random. It had trends that you could follow, and sometimes there would be things going on in the storyline that would be reflected in the threat levels. So there was stuff going on, in Arkham, and the Arkham threat level would be going up at the time it would reflect it. So it matched. It wasn't just random. It was all according to a plan that we would plot out ahead of time, and then it would just set it up so that it would execute. And I still have a bunch of these Sponge shirts. So yeah, if you ever are ever in Herndon, let me know, and I could probably get you one. It had the the elder sign on the front, and then it said "Fight the Evil" with the Sponge URL on the back, which is, as you know, is no longer active. I'd love to get this back up and running, but yeah, it would take somebody who knows how to do this stuff better than I do. I was just the idea guy. I would dream up what I wanted the site to do, and Marcus would enable it. And he very cleverly enabled it in such a way that I could then add more content without his participation. So I got really good at updating the site and just saying, all right, I'm adding all this content. And yeah, about once a month or once every other month, I would sit down and spend the day just adding new content that would then show up over the next several months. And that was how it played out. And yeah, it was just fun coming up with the stories. The Western Survivalist site was very funny as well, because you would go to the site. I don't remember what the URL is. You would go to the site, and it would be a fake site. It would look like an exterminator's. And there was a way for you to find a link on their fake site that would lead you to another site that was also a fake site. And so, and it would, you would go to like Meet Frank West, and it would take you to a picture of not Spencer Hum, some other guy. And it was on that page that you could find a way, you could divine a way to click on something that would lead you to the second site, which was also not Spencer. And somewhere on there was yet another way to get into the actual Western Survivalist site. So this was led by Barney's friend Frank West, and Frank West is just the name is a play on words. It's Frank West's middle name is Herbert, so Frank Herbert West. He is a descendant of Herbert West, and with a Frank Herbert reference thrown in there for fun. And it was also run by Barney's brother, Leslie. So Frank and Les would have their adventures as well, and we had some of our historians were assigned to the Western Survivalists, and so they would do little adventures with them. And these are Silver Twilight Lodge is an obvious Lovecraftian reference. Arkham Freemasons, Mortal Goat Society again, the Esoteric Order of Dagon is a real thing. Zonk this is the organization that names entities, and which Barney was a member, which is a reference from the movie that we made. So yeah, that's Les right there. That's my friend Todd, who plays Chet Dyer, who was an original Sponge member, dead. And you can read up on Chet's website. Oh, yeah, Western Survivalists. That's their website. I don't know if this link is going to work, because it's probably. Oh yeah, there you go. So yeah, that is not Frank West. That's my friend Tim. To rid you of damaging and frustrating pests that threaten you and your loved ones, Frank West. So yes, common insect problems. Yeah, I don't know what that's. Oh yeah, so that's funny. testimonials. Darn good work around these parts. Yeah, maybe it's under the other services. Yes, our real, and that's not our real founder either. That is Spencer's partner at the time, John. So yeah, other services would lead you to. So yeah, it wasn't really hidden, but who's going to bother clicking on these things? So yeah, that didn't come up. And maybe you had to be signed into the network in order to. So yeah, so Chet Dyer was killed on the Arctic expedition, the giant penguins there. So yeah, that's it. Like I said, chime in if you knew anything about it, which is not going to be a lot of you, I suspect. But like I said, at one point we had a little over 1,000 registered historians. Now a lot of them, I think, they registered once and they maybe poked around a little. It was probably about between 300 and 400 people who were the really rabid members of it, and they were forming their own clubs, and I had people they sent me photographs. I had these sponge bumper stickers, and they would send me photographs of their friends topless, covering their stuff with the bumper sticker, and people would send me Cthulhu statues, and so yeah, it was a wild ride, and I certainly do miss the adventures and the times that we had on it, and yeah, Pretorius' Secret. Anybody who knows what that is a reference to will get that joke, and it's I think it's a pretty good one. And Steaks and Donuts. Chambers Truck Stop. Look for the yellow sign. I mean, come on, who doesn't love that? If you get it, you get it, right? So that is it for this video, Captain Obits. That was the other thing. We had this whole thing. We had a whole menu of Little Chum surprises. Sorry about that. I cracked myself up because I spent a lot of time making these dumb things and getting them on there. Yes, Benevolent Street again, Bed Bath and From Beyond. I mean, it's a delight for super Lovecraftian nerds such as myself. So that's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.